So Tim is going to present his 3-round decision-making process for better decisions. So this is being recorded, so we can all play us back and make sure we're following this process, right? Yeah, Tim, go ahead and take it away. I'm going to go ahead and put it on mute then.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So, thanks for coming to my lunch and learn on deciding together. What I'm sharing with you today, it comes from a 2-day workshop I participated in a few years ago about effective group work and organizing ourselves. And the part that I'm pulling out to share with you today is it's about making decisions using the 3-round process. You're probably already naturally using the themes of these rounds to a certain extent, but while I'm presenting today, consider that you might find more clarity, more quality, and more power in your group work if you embrace these 3 components deliberately and as separate things. Out of all the things I learned in the workshop, I'm focusing on decisions because I would say that carrying out decisions is the most crucial way that work gets done and change happens. You make so many decisions throughout the day that affect the work you're doing and the contribution you're making. In the work I do, for example, at the service desk, I make decisions about which ticket to work on next, and that affects how long different customers wait for help from us. I make decisions about how thorough to be in the notes I put on tickets, and that affects how helpful I am to other people that might have to work on the same ticket. And I make decisions about what to share with my coworkers. What's the balance between sharing too little and sharing too much? And that affects whether I'm seen as withholding or seen as helpful or seen as a nuisance. So those personal decisions we make clearly have an impact on what sort of team member we are. At the bigger level, at the level of a department, the decisions that are made have an even bigger effect. Which projects will we work on? What do we invest in? These choices have big ramifications, so we're going to want to make the best decisions we can. So I hope it's obvious that the quality of our decisions affects the quality of the results we get. So it would be wise to want to improve how decisions are made. While I was doing research for this presentation, I encountered this idea that there are 3 basic things we're trying to do in meetings, 3 desirable outcomes for any particular thing on the agenda: understanding, exploring, or moving to action. So we create understanding by reporting on what we know and asking questions. These sorts of meetings might be focused around sharing status or going over a report or attending a training. When the desired outcome is to understand, then we are successful when everyone understands. Another reason to meet is to explore something together. Maybe we're exploring solutions to a problem or finding out what people think about an idea. The goal here is to enrich the possibilities. And a final reason to convene is to move forward, to determine a course of action, to decide, and to commit. It's worth pointing out that the outcomes further down the list build upon the outcomes higher up in the list. In order to explore the possibilities, you first need to have an understanding of the problem space. And in order to make a decision, you need a good understanding, and you will want to have explored different options. With that, let's take a look at the 3 rounds for better decision making. You'll see that each round lines up exactly with each one of the desirable meeting outcomes. The first round is a clarifying questions round. We use that round to reach shared understanding. After that, we can do a reaction round to enrich the possibilities. And to make a fully supported decision, we can do a consent round. So let's say we have a proposal in hand that someone on the team has generated. We can take that proposal through each round, first checking for understanding in a clarifying questions round, then exploring anything that might need changing in a reaction round, and finally coming to a decision in a consent round. What I'm suggesting today is that we can come out of this process with a stronger decision than if we skip stages or try to make decisions ad hoc. Each round can be initiated easily enough with a prompt. For getting shared understanding, do a clarifying question round with the prompt, "What questions do you have to better understand this?" For exploring people's ideas and thoughts, do a reaction round by prompting, "What are your quick reactions?" And to quickly evaluate the strength of a proposal, do a consent round with the prompt, "Do you have any objection?" We'll take a look at those rounds in more detail in a bit, but first I want to take a little detour to expand on what I'm talking about when I say rounds. When I say do a round for questions and do a round for reactions, I'm talking about stages in this decision-making process, but I'm also literally talking about going around to everyone in the decision-making body so that everyone provides their input. When we're meeting physically, it's literally choosing someone to go first and then going around the table to have everyone speak without being interrupted. But Tim, no one sits around tables anymore. Don't worry, this is 2020. I'll talk about ways to do this when we're meeting virtually, but for now, it's easiest to explain if you just picture the team sitting around a table. Why would we want to do this? Wouldn't it be time-consuming to hear from everyone? It depends, and it depends on what you're aiming to achieve. I would say that in general, in knowledge work, it's preferable to get everyone's heads into the game. There are other occasions where it's preferable to have a leader make a decision. For example, when something is very straightforward or there's a fast-moving situation that requires a quick response. In many other cases, it'll be worthwhile in the long run to pool people's expertise. Agile coach Tim Ottinger says that when it comes to knowledge work, pooling beats the hell out of dividing. Using rounds is a behavior that groups can adopt that supports the goal of pooling expertise and diversity. I want to help illustrate the benefits of rounds by looking at its opposite, the default style that we fall back on, which is no agreed upon structure at all. And we might call this debate style. We've all been a part of this. It looks something like this, right? Maybe this guy brings up something and she has an idea about it, but she doesn't agree and wants something different. They go back and forth a few times, and then this guy jumps in to support one side, and then she makes a passive comment that everybody ignores, and in the end, we all just do what the guy with the white hair says. We don't hear from everyone. In this example interaction, we never heard from these guys at all. Because someone is less likely to speak up in a heated discussion does not mean that their contribution is less valuable. And for people that have jumped into the fray, maybe they felt they had to repeat the same thing several times. That's not efficient. In debate style, there's no flow, and everyone is mostly just trying to get heard. So listen up. If you care about equity, you're going to want to use rounds. Rounds ensure that everyone is heard. Without rounds, when we're just using normal communication, all of the unquestioned power dynamics come along for the ride. But rounds are an easy way to understand and automatically change any implicit dynamics like men talking more than women that we might have in our culture. We can talk about all of the same topics using rounds, but the feeling of the meeting is different. When we talk in rounds, we know that we'll have our turn to talk. We don't have to sit in a discussion wondering how to get our contribution heard and how to get a turn. In debate style, we often try to convince people of our viewpoint. With rounds, it feels more like everyone brings their ideas, perspectives, and experiences to the table. In the workshop that I took where I learned this, every group has a facilitator. The facilitator walks a group through agenda items and is the primary initiator of rounds. They help to restore the circular flow in case of interruptions. You don't necessarily need a facilitator in order to do rounds, but it is helpful. But let me give you some language that you can use, that anyone can use pretty much any time to invite a group to do a round even when there is no facilitator. Start by stating what you're seeking, such as, I'm wondering what people are thinking about this idea. And then say, can we do a round and everyone shares or passes? Take time for a quick eye check to see if people assent, and then call on a particular person to start. Let the group share their thoughts one by one. To signal to the next person that they can start, it'll help if each person says something like, I'm done, when they're done sharing. If you notice someone jumping in out of turn, you can make a request like, would you hold your thought or write it down? I want to keep the turns going around. So using rounds has real benefits as a way to organize group input. Everyone has the opportunity to be heard. People can listen to each other more closely because their focus shifts to what they want to add rather than debating what other people are adding. People know their turn is coming up, so they don't have to worry about what it takes to get heard. And everyone's ideas get onto the table because everyone participates. You can keep going around while value is still being added. Often what one person says will spark new insights from someone who has already spoken. So going around again will let you harvest additional thoughts. I promised I'd give a tip for how to handle rounds and turn taking when working virtually. And it's as simple as having someone, the facilitator if you have one, defining a turn taking order and posting it into the chat. Use that order for your rounds. And by the way, it's good to mix up who you start with. So whoever calls a round should also call on a particular person to start. Then just follow the order. Okay, so that covers our detour into what I mean by rounds. Now let's return to the 3 rounds for better decision making. So quick review. When we're making a decision, we first want to ensure that everyone understands the proposal. We'll do that with clarifying questions round. And then we'll take everyone's quick reactions in a quick reaction round. And then we'll do a round checking if the proposal is fully consented to, and if not, then working through the objections. Ideally, some work has been done ahead of time to generate a specific proposal for the thing we're deciding about. You can use these 3 rounds for ad hoc decisions, but for the best results, a person or small group will work ahead of time to understand a need and generate a proposal for the team's consideration. It's just a smarter use of valuable time. A quality proposal, especially when people have had ample time to read it ahead of time, should lead to richer discussion and a better result. I'll also point out that there are situations where you don't need all 3 rounds. If you're not making a decision and you're just sharing a report, for example, then you would probably only do the first round to check that everyone has a full understanding. Or if you just want to explore an idea, you can skip the consent round since you're not yet making a decision. So with something ready for a decision, we bring it to the team, and the first round for making better decisions is to make sure everyone understands the proposal by using a clarifying question round. Go around the group one by one and find out if people need anything clarified. For example, what does this acronym mean? Was a person consulted on this? When will this be implemented? The person initiating the round can either go around and gather all the questions from the circle at once, and then have the proposal author answer them, or you could choose to have the author answer them one at a time as questions are asked. It'll have a different feel depending on which way you do it. And for groups that aren't used to using rounds, if you gather all of the questions in a round first and then answer them, it'll help keep the round on track. Doing it that way can also provide good feedback to the proposal authors. So for example, if somebody raises a question and then later in the round someone else says, I also have the same question as Doug, then you know that the topic might not have been covered well in the proposal, and you'll get a sense of what sorts of things are important to both Doug and the other person. There's some bad examples, some things that aren't clarifying questions, they're questions, but you want to watch out for these things like, why don't we do this other thing instead? That's not focused on understanding. In this round, the question should just be focused on understanding. We're complete with this round, the clarifying questions round, when no one has further questions, and the proposal has been tweaked with clarifications from this round. The next round is the quick reaction round. In this round, everyone gets a chance to give an opinion on the proposal. It prepares the ground for decision making. We start the round by asking, what are your quick reactions? Ted Rao is a trainer in this process and says, a quick reaction round is a wonderful way of building a sense of team identity. By the way, you get to hear what others think, what a proposal means to them, and what their concerns are. Especially on controversial topics, it is important to ground every decision in the group and to learn more from each other. Here are some examples of the sorts of things you might hear in the reaction round. Things like, I like this proposal, or I like this part because of this reason. I see this solving our problem with, or I don't think I can support this because, or I appreciate the team for seeing this need and making this proposal, or just something simple like, we really need this. Makes sense? My take on it is that everyone has an opinion anyway, and they'll make it heard eventually anyway, in direct or indirect ways. So it's worthwhile to gather reactions up front in a structured way. So that's the quick reaction round. By the way, we might also call this the quick take round. You can lead a quick take round with other questions that you want group input on, and you'll generate different results. You could ask things like, what do you think is important here? Or what do you think we should do? All right, when you've completed this round, the next round is the decision-making round, the consent round. The consent round shows us where the group stands regarding adopting the proposal. It will flush out objections to the implementation of the proposal. We're going to ask people if they have any objection to the proposal, go around and hear from them if they have no objection, or if they have specific objections. If there are no objections, then the proposal has been decided and can be put into action. If there are objections, you'll work through them to make a better decision. I'll share suggestions for how to resolve objections in a moment, but first, here are some tips on the consent round. Go to the consent round even if you think there are objections, because the objections will help identify essential issues. Gather all objections in the round first. You'll talk about objections after the round, so it's okay if you don't understand an objection right away. Keep the round going. Don't break the circular flow. If a proposal is good enough, lean towards adopting it. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the possible. When you voice an objection, you do it for the good of the organization, not to express your personal preferences. For example, you wouldn't object to a proposal for a website design because you don't like the yellow color that it uses. That's your personal preference. But a valid objection might be, the color scheme in this proposed website design doesn't meet the corporate style guide. See the difference? Okay, so what do we do if there is an objection? First, it's good to have the right frame of mind. Here's some insight from Ted Rao again. Dealing with objections is core to improving decision-making. If you know how to deal with objections in a constructive and skillful way, you will turn every concern into something better for your organization. This can be on the interpersonal level, on the level of the organization's culture, or on the content level of your operations. When you are curious to hear your coworkers' objections, it will boost their engagement, their sense of ownership, and ultimately increase productivity and happiness. Objections aren't barriers. They are opportunities to resolve problems ahead of time. When you work through objections, you get more buy-in. Everyone is responsible for the quality of the decision and gives their consent. There's no, well, I told you so, after things go wrong. So if there are objections, here's some strategies. You can change the proposal to accommodate the concern. Or deciding to adopt the proposal for a limited term and reevaluate on a given date can be very helpful. Or decide to adopt the proposal, but also decide to measure the area of concern so that you have feedback on it. For example, if someone in the group has a concern that, say, the call times at the service desk will go up if we adopt the proposal, we could choose to move forward with the proposal, but include measuring call times before and after the decision so we can later on see if the decision indeed affected call times or not. Maybe another strategy for working through an objection is to have a subgroup rework the proposal offline. Then, a modified proposal can re-enter the 3 rounds at any stage. Depending on the complexity of changes, you may want to do a clarifying questions round and a reaction round before doing a consent round again. When there are no more objections, the consent round is complete, and we've completed this 3-round process. We've made a well-considered decision with everyone's consent. Rounds change how teams flow. You can always hope that people will speak up, but the only sure way to hear from everyone is to actually explicitly check with everyone. Nothing is more inclusive than that. And with rounds, the feeling changes to be less about convincing each other and more about sharing your thoughts and processing everyone's input. Try rounds sometime. You can use the words of invitation I talked about. Could we do a round on that? And even if you don't use rounds, I think you'll get some mileage out of doing a 3-step decision-making process. First, for clarity, does everyone understand? Then to gather reactions. What would you like to say about it? And finally, to check for consent. Do you have any objection? All right, everyone. Thank you for your time, and go forth and make some great decisions.
Thanks a lot, Tim. That was really interesting.